Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, heart math practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, welcome to episode 75 of the podcast, Boundary Setting 101, an essential guide for people pleasers. This is the penultimate episode of season 1 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, so I'm really excited for what's coming up in season 2. But today I wanted to tackle a topic that comes up really regularly in my coaching sessions. It's something, if you've listened to previous podcasts in this season, you'll know that 2023 was my year of boundary setting, and it's such an important topic to tackle. So what I wanted to do today was talk a little bit about why boundaries matter, what people pleasing is, and 5 ways that you can more effectively set boundaries in your life to feel happier and actually feel like your needs are being met and get your needs met, because just a reminder, they matter. So let's talk a little bit about why boundaries are important. Boundaries help you protect your own personal energy. So by setting boundaries, you ensure that you have enough time for yourself to rest, to recharge, and to enjoy your life. It's such a cliche, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. And when you don't have effective boundaries in place, often that's where you'll end up, and that's what you'll end up trying to do. And it leads to burnout. It's a recipe for disaster, quite frankly, when you don't protect your own energy. Boundaries help you maintain self-respect. Defined boundaries demonstrate to other people that your needs are just as important, if not more important sometimes, than theirs. And when you value yourself, other people will also value you more too. Boundaries help you improve your personal relationships with people. When you create clearly defined expectations for a relationship, whether that's a friendship, a marriage, a work relationship, it really does reduce the likelihood of there being misunderstandings. It reduces resentment and disappointment with people. Boundaries are so important for improving our relationships. When we know what somebody will or won't tolerate, what isn't okay for somebody else, we can adjust our behavior accordingly. And also when you communicate what isn't okay for you, you set the bar for how you expect to be treated by other people. And this is really, really important. And this is something that people who are people pleasers struggle to do. Let's talk a little bit about people pleasing. If you're a people pleaser, you will be deriving part of your self-worth and your value from making other people happy. And this will often be at your own expense. So examples of this might mean staying late at work to make life easier for your boss who's gone home early. It might mean taking on extra responsibility for your parents because your other siblings can't or won't. It might mean not asking your partner to help you with things around the house, even though you're already overloaded because your partner is complaining about being tired all the time. So rather than state your own needs at the risk of aggravating them more if they've had a bad day at work, you just take on more and keep quiet about it because you don't want to upset them. And the first thing you can do is to self-reflect. Often we don't necessarily understand what our own needs are. And if you aren't able to succinctly put that into words, it's impossible to communicate it to somebody else. So if you can spend some time identifying what your core values are, and from those core values, what your needs are from other people in your life, you can sit with a journal and do this and just really write out what is it I need in order to feel safe and respected and seen by other people. When you have a really clear idea of what your own needs are, it is far easier to articulate them to somebody else. It's difficult to say to somebody, I feel unhappy when you do X. If you can't tell them why that is, you can't tell them what you want them to be doing instead, it is very difficult. So self-reflection is really important. And I think the other part of self-reflection is really understanding your own limits as well, and being aware of the situations and the people that drain your energy, or situations that make you feel uncomfortable. When you can make a note of that and you can start to work backwards and notice that something or somebody has made you uncomfortable, and you can start to reflect on why that is, you will start to be able to understand what need has not been met, or which of your values has been violated, for want of a better word, by that person. And when you understand what is making you uncomfortable, it is easier to articulate what you would like somebody to do instead. Communicate your needs clearly. And this is a skill that you can learn if you're conflict averse and you struggle to actually articulate what you need. Go back to the first step I shared, which is to self-reflect and understand what it is you need. And then when you're communicating that, be direct and honest, but use I statements. So you don't end up blaming others and starting a conflict that doesn't really need to occur in the first place. So, for example, rather than saying to somebody, "You're exhausting me, I cannot stand being around you, you drain my energy and I need a gap, I need a break from you," which might be what you're thinking, it would be far better to just simply say, "I need some time to myself this weekend to recharge." Doesn't upset anybody, but it states the need very clearly, and it will give you the time you need away from whoever is driving you nuts. And it's important to stay calm and respectful when you are communicating your needs. Being direct doesn't mean, as I've just stated, it doesn't mean being rude. You don't have to offload all of your feelings on somebody else, but it is about stating your needs in a calm way. And the best thing to do is, if you are very triggered or you're very activated by somebody, is to not try and have a conversation from a very heightened state. Wait until you're calm, be able to just really get yourself into a neutral state, and say to somebody, "I'd like to have a conversation with you, please, about this," and then do it from a calm space. It's far easier to think clearly when you are not in a state of being massively stressed. The third thing is to practice saying no. This can be one of the hardest things for people pleasers to do, which is why they end up overwhelmed and worn out and constantly saying yes to things that they really don't want to be doing. And it's hard to say no. I think often what keeps people back from saying no is the worry of being rejected, the worry of being judged, the worry of starting a conflict with somebody. And if you're conflict averse, which a lot of people who identify as people pleasers are, you run the risk when you say no to somebody of them challenging you. And if that's very uncomfortable for you, you're going to do whatever you can to avoid that. So practice saying no, but start small with it. And you can build your confidence over time. The more you say no, and then you see that there isn't an adverse reaction, the easier it is to up the stakes with the size of the no, if you like. So, for example, you might say to somebody who's asked you to help you with something that means you're going to stay late on a Friday to deal with it. You could say to them, "No, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that this evening. I have plans, but I could help you on Monday. Would that work for you?" And I'm assuming you have got time on Monday to be able to do that, or whenever you can do it. So you've said no, you can't do it, but you've offered an alternative. And if we take this a step further, you don't always have to explain yourself, quite frankly. And again, this is something that takes practice. If you can't or don't want to do something, simply saying to somebody, "No, I'm not able to help you with that," is enough. You don't have to justify it every time. And I think this is, again, it's a muscle that you start to flex. And again, you don't have to be rude. It doesn't have to be confrontational. But if you genuinely can't or don't want to do something, it's perfectly okay to decline and not explain yourself. The fourth thing with setting boundaries is to set consequences for people overstepping those boundaries, and making sure you follow through on the consequences of that. Otherwise, you might as well just not bother setting the boundary at all. So, for example, if we take a business like mine that's an online coaching business, there might be a client who perpetually shows up to an appointment 15, 20 minutes late. And perhaps you have allowed the session to still go for an hour, even though they're 20 minutes late, even though your terms and conditions say that if you are 20 minutes late, the time's going to be deducted from your session. You feel bad doing that, but actually it's eating up into your time for doing other things. Maybe it's putting your schedule out of whack for this one client. So what you might do is say to this client, you've been 20 minutes late to the past 4 sessions and I've accommodated this, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to accommodate this going forward. It's causing a problem with my schedule. And if it happens again, I'm only going to wait for 10 minutes for you. If you are still not in the session after 10 minutes, I'm going to cancel the call. You're going to forfeit the session and you're going to forfeit the amount you've paid for the session. And then you have to make sure the next time they're late that that's what you do, because I guarantee you they won't be late again. And it really is, people need to know that when you set a boundary, you actually mean it. It isn't just something you're saying and then you're going to be a pushover again. And this is practice. This takes practice, folks. So be gentle with yourself with this. It's hard doing this if you are not used to doing it. And be consistent about the boundaries you set. Be consistent about the consequences you put in place and be consistent about reinforcing them. Like I've said, if people are used to you accommodating them all the time, it's going to be a bit of a shock to their system when all of a sudden you're putting boundaries down that have never been there before. People are going to test those and push those for a little while. So you have to kind of stay strong and hold the line with it, and you will see some change. But it's always, whenever you're changing something, there's this messy middle bit, which is quite hard to navigate. So you just have to kind of white knuckle through that and know that on the other side of it, life will get easier when you have strong boundaries in place. And the last thing here is to seek support with this. So find allies in your life who support you. Make a mental note of the people who respect your boundaries and people who, even though you've set them, even though you reinforce them, still try to push them all the time. Do you want to be spending time with those people, or can you start to limit the time you spend with them? And can you surround yourself rather with people who are supportive of you? You will progress faster and you will progress with a lot more ease if you are in an environment where people support you. And the other thing to do is to have professional help with this. I am a very no-nonsense life coach, and this is something I support clients with. I will not only help clients come up with a plan for creating boundaries, but I'll also hold them accountable to setting them and maintaining them so that there can be progress in their lives, which is really what you're paying for when you're being coached. Is you're paying to make progress, you're paying to have growth, and you're paying to have positive support. You're paying to have support whilst you create positive change in your life. One thing I want to add here is that it is normal to feel guilty when you start to set boundaries when you haven't been used to doing it, and you might have a bit of a, oh, well, you've always helped me before. Why are you not helping me now, from somebody else? Guilt is far better to feel momentary guilt initially. Let's be real here. It might be days of guilt when you set a boundary for the first time. It's okay. Just know it's part of the process. Guilt is far better to feel and far easier to let go of than resentment, which is what will come from repeatedly saying yes to things you want to say no to. I am a big fan of Gabor Mate's work, and he has a wonderful book called When the Body Says No. And one of the things he talks about in this book is how dangerous effectively holding on to resentment can be. There have been quite a lot of studies done that show that people who end up with things like breast cancer have often shoved their feelings down. They've put their own needs last, and they're very resentful. I'm not saying that just because you're feeling momentary resentment, you're going to get cancer. That's not what I'm suggesting. But in the long run, when you live a lifetime of not having your needs met and meeting other people's, you're going to feel resentful. And it does have the potential to make you feel ill. These big negative emotions manifest and sit in our bodies. And when you start to learn to work with them and explore them and process them, you're going to feel a lot better. It's if anyone's interested in this, I'd highly recommend that When the Body Says No book. It is a very powerful and very, very interesting read. And he closes off in the book of talking about guilt and resentment and says, of the two, pick guilt. It is far less damaging to you and it's far easier to let go of and process through. So I want to just sum up by saying that setting boundaries is a journey, and it will be a bumpy journey if it is something that's new to you. If I can support you with this, I am here to do that. It is a big part of the work I do with clients. Often I'll have clients come to me and say, I've had enough of my life being this way. I want to create some change. And a lot of that involves stating your own needs, understanding your own needs, and getting them met. It means validating yourself rather than sitting with people-pleasing behavior, which is really a behavior where you're seeking external validation and value and being of value to other people because you don't feel that valuable in yourself. And being coached is one of the ways that you can start to shift that. When you learn to self-validate and when you boost your self-esteem, you boost your self-worth, you will be less inclined to do things like people-pleasing because you won't be needing the external congratulations, thank you that you get from other people for helping. It's a really big step on the personal development journey, and it really is life-changing. So I'm going to leave you with 2 questions to ponder. Where in your life are your boundaries being repeatedly crossed? And what is the first no you are going to say after listening to today's podcast? Pop me a DM on Instagram at Emma O'Brien Coach and let me know. And I hope you have enjoyed this episode. The last episode of season 1 is coming up in a few days' time, so keep an eye out for that. And then we're going to be kicking off with season 2, which is really a season that's all about coaching for women, self-development for women, and empowering women with the tools to live lives that really light them up. So I'm very excited to be sharing that with you. Thanks for being with me today. I will see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.